and welcome to this week's episode of #Leadership What's on Your Mind, a podcast to make you stop and think about your leadership journey. And we're going to add value by bringing in experts and great people who have had great stories and experiences in the world of business, and also a diverse range of stories. So today we are speaking to Matt. How are you doing, Matt? You okay?
Good morning, Stu. I'm very well, thank you.
Excellent. So Matt's joining me from Sweden. So thank you for your time this morning. We have a similar background as ex-military. But Matt has gone into the outward bounds and the expedition side of transferring skills for leaders and teams back into business. So it'll be great to hear his perspectives and experiences and thoughts on leadership. So I'm going to start the 20-minute timer. So Matt, for the people who don't know you, if you could just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Good morning. Yeah, so my name is Matt Larsson-Clifford. As Stu mentioned, I live in Sweden. We relocated here in 2013 after 16 years in the Air Force as a physical education officer. As Stu said, the majority of my time was spent working in the outdoors using adventurous training to develop Air Force personnel and cross-service personnel. We moved in 2013 for a variety of reasons, and we now have a small holding with some animals and forest, and try to live the good life as much as we can and occasionally do some work to support that.
Excellent. Sounds perfect.
Yeah, sounds perfect. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, I can imagine in those environments as well, a bit more challenging. So to start off with, let me just give us a little bit of a short, obviously we're called #Leadership, what's on your mind? What comes to your mind when it either a definition or your thoughts on leadership as a topic?
Well, I guess for me personally, my predominant sort of focus on leadership is outdoor leadership. And my leadership journey has predominantly been spent leading people in the outdoors. So I quite often defer to the William Blake poem from the 1800s, which basically reflects that where men and mountains meet, great things happen. So I believe the outdoors is an incredible environment for developing people, and vis-a-vis developing leadership and developing teams. And I guess I'm not sure which came first, my interest in working and developing people, or my interest and love of the outdoors. I probably would err towards my love and interest and passion of the outdoors, and then worked out that actually, if I can combine the two, then I've kind of got the quality of career, quality of life that I want.
Yeah, amazing. I always tell people with great passion that we used in the military the outward bounds, if you like, as the medium to test and develop individuals and teams. And I see you very much as an expert in that field now that you've gone on and upwards in that area. So staying with you, and that one question that we always ask everybody, are you aware either at the time or on reflection about where your personal leadership journey started?
Yeah, I've been giving this some thought since I knew I was going to come on this, and I wanted to thank you for having me on the program, but at the same time I wanted to really chastise you because it has really challenged me in terms of trying to answer this question. I think listening to a lot of the other podcasts and a lot of the other guests, it goes back a long way, and the whole nature nurture debate cuts in. I could say it was Cubs, I could say it was Scouts, Army Cadets, positions of responsibility within school, positions of responsibility, college, a variety of different things. I think that it's really difficult to pinpoint any one particular occasion where it started. I think I've always enjoyed being in groups. I've always enjoyed in taking part in things. I've always enjoyed I suppose I've always enjoyed a challenge. I've always enjoyed, being part of a team and having a responsibility within that team to achieve that particular challenge. So in terms of a particular point in time, it's very difficult to pinpoint. But I think those early experiences with Cubs, Scouts, positions of responsibility, sports teams, captains, that sort of thing, I think it definitely gave me a direction in terms of what was coming next. And there's almost, it's linked up, isn't it, with Cubs, Scouts, perhaps Army Cadets. I was in the Territorial Army, and then the military sort of side of things came in. So that the journey has taken me through a whole different range of experiences. And I think over time, what's happened is that I've perhaps, those early experiences, I think, were very much based around leadership, which was focused more towards that sort of transactional style, more sort of command leadership, because it's what I saw, it was what was surrounding me at that particular time. If we go back 10, 20, 30 years, then the sort of the current thinking on leadership that we perhaps subscribe to today, transformational leadership and placing the individual at the focus of our challenge, it wasn't there. I think it was more transactional, and I think I started on down that road, and then my interest and sort of passion for the outdoors became quite important to me, and I studied a diploma in outdoor activities and then a teaching degree in outdoor education, and I think it was really the teaching degree which gave me a bit of more of an insight in terms of how the outdoors could be used to help to develop people. And it was that developing people through the outdoors where I started to perhaps understand and appreciate that it wasn't necessarily all transactional stuff that we could do in the outdoors. A large part of it was and still will be, because where you've got safety issues, then sometimes it has to be transactional. So yeah, I almost got a chronology of starting out with a sort of very sort of command-based perspective on leadership through to what I hope I have now, which is a little bit more focused towards transformational leadership and perhaps investing in the team and investing in those around me more than just using the command hierarchical structure to get things done.
And suppose that you just covered there that in the environment that you operate and also take others into, and we'll come on to that, you've got a multitude of different leadership styles that you have to dip in and out of, and giving people exposure to the situational awareness of when those are needed. It is a great thing to be able to show people and put people in that environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the work that I do at the moment, certainly this year, it's been slightly reorientated, is to run various leadership courses, with respect to sea kayaking, canoeing, mountaineering. And of course, what you find yourself doing, and what I found myself doing, right, we've got to cover leadership. There's an element of the course which is defined as leadership. Oh, what are we going to do for that? Well, we'll do some more navigation, and we'll do some, because the techniques, the techniques and the tactics are actually quite easy to teach, because they're physical things. Whereas the whole concept of leadership is a challenge to teach, because I see it more as an art. And it's I think the best way of teaching that is through modeling than lecturing. It's more through showing and doing, and people seeing what you're doing, and then perhaps making sense of that, as opposed to giving a lecture on leadership. We can talk about the theory of it, the practice of it, certainly in the outdoors is quite different. And you're absolutely right, that ability to know when it's okay to sort of adopt a fairly laissez-faire approach to what's going on, and let the group really experience stuff, as opposed to step in and prevent an accident happening. There's a skill required in that, and that sort of profile from hands-on to hands-off is something which is sometimes can be very challenging to manage. But nevertheless, it's very important to be aware of it, to give people the best experience and the best opportunity to develop their own particular thoughts on leadership, because it's leadership is almost it's almost a parallel to if I'm teaching a particular canoe stroke or particular mountaineering technique. You know, I'll often start off by introducing the skill or the technique with, right, this is what we're trying to achieve. The journey from A to B is one which we'll all take a different route, and then that isn't necessarily a black and white answer at the end. Yeah. There's just shades of grey. Okay, maybe some safety elements, you know, you have to do it this way. But for the majority of stuff, the majority of sort of concepts and techniques and tactics, I try to employ the concept of people really making their own sense of that particular skill, on the basis that ultimately the way that leadership works for me and what I see as important isn't going to be the same as your aspect, your perspective on it. I think we all have to put our own stamp in terms of what works with our own upbringing, our own background, our own leadership journeys. And it would be wrong. It would be wrong to
saying then about when I say about you've got to take leadership off the page. There's quite a few people who are reading lots of leadership books, and it's the accountability and implementation that's going to give you your version of that. And that's exactly what you've just been saying then in a great example.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, I tried to describe my sort of leadership journey largely in sort of focus towards transactional leadership in the early days, I think with the Cubs and the Scouts and the Army Cadets and all that sort of stuff. But I think what you end up doing is you take little snippets from each experience and you gradually mold them into something which works for you, which works for your values, which works for your morals. You know, it'd be a pretty boring place if the whole world subscribed to one vision and thought of leadership, because there isn't, is there? It is a personal thing, and we can read as much theory and understand as many models as are out there, but actually when it comes down to it, I think there has to be some personality within leadership. There has to be some charisma. There has to be some things which stand people apart, and part of their journey. As you say, it's a never-ending journey. It's not. There's no summit here. No. It's just something which is continually developing and continually evolving. And you know, if I reflect back on my sort of Air Force career, I made a few notes in terms of some of the sort of key points along my 16 years in the Air Force, that I think sort of reflected upon has perhaps shaped the way I think. In the early days, I was responsible for something called Investors in People, which you might not even remember, because it was almost like a token approach for a station commander, so a chief exec. Right, we've looked after our people today because we've ticked all these boxes, and it was focused on the individual. It was focused on the person. So the intent was there, but the way that it was delivered didn't really fit with transformational leadership. So that was some early day stuff. I was then fortunate enough to be involved with the development of the leadership development team, and sat in on various studies and various sort of brainstorming groups to develop back in the sort of early 2000s what the leadership strategy was for the Air Force in terms of sort of a through life program on developing people. And then at that point, it started to sort of become clear to me that the Air Force was, as usual, 20 years perhaps behind the civilian world, but it was definitely keen to move away from purely transactional leadership, because it recognized that the recruits of the day and of the future, Generation X, Y, Z, the millennial guys, wouldn't respond to that. They wouldn't respond to that form of leadership, and if that was going to be the case, then the machine was not going to work. So those early days were very much focused upon understanding that actually we need to focus on the individual. We need to create opportunities for people to understand how they work as individuals, to develop their self-awareness, to develop their self-leadership. And if we go through the years, you'll probably remember TRIM, you'll remember human factors, coming right up to the current day, you know, resilience, the Robson Resilience Centre, which we both worked at, which was the Force Development Centre at the time. We've forgot Force Development. So all of these reiterations of how we look after our people, how we develop leadership, how we develop teams, I think slowly has sort of come up to sort of current thinking, with the most important fact of looking after the individual, and the knowledge and the awareness that your team, your players are your most important asset, are your most important resource. How can we invest in them to the best effect?
Yeah. Do you know what, you've just reminded me about something. I remember being at the outdoor training centres, force development training centres when I was there.
Yeah.
And I remember the great experiences of experiencing that transition, because you'd get an officer cadre coming through, and everybody in the room had done 20 to 30 years in the military, and there was me, mid to late 20s, standing up, and I was going to deliver leadership training to them, and you could see that it was a case of, oh, what's this guy going to teach us about leadership? But they were transitioning from the old thought process, and it was amazing to have those handshakes at the end of the week, to be, thank you so much for like making me think outside the box, adding those different, and I talk to this about my value in the business world now. I come with different languages, I come with different perspectives. I thought when I left that I was going to have a negative because I don't have any business experience, but you'll know this, it's actually a massive bonus that you don't have any bias towards the environment you're going into.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be like the I don't know if you remember the engineering lean events that the Air Force had, but basically if they were looking at introducing a new piece of equipment, they would lean that process by having a non-specialist in the room when they were designing the process, somebody that would ask those questions that the specialist would not take into account. So I totally agree that actually the value of your understanding of processes and leadership on a business is arguably better than having a business specialist, because they will look at it from a completely different perspective, right? And you will come at it with a completely open mind, and I think on that basis you'll bring a lot more value to it.
Yeah, and that's been real. So we've got 3 minutes left.
Wow.
I really want you to share, like, paint the picture of what you can give a team and an individual now in what does a expedition look like? Well, what do they go to the extremes? I know you do 7-day, 10-day. What does that look like? And then how does that link to somebody's leadership journey? What can you give them as an experience?
Right. Well, I think what I try to do is almost come down Maslow's hierarchy of needs, come back to physiological needs and safety, and challenge the groups in terms of those aspects, because by doing that, I think I create adversity. By creating adversity, I create also an opportunity for them to understand how they lead themselves, to understand or to create a fantastic environment for the individual to develop their self-awareness, to develop reflection, to develop their self-care, to develop their understanding of how the group is working. Because I think one of your other guests talked about the crocodile infested custard. The outdoors, it's real, it's in your face. There's no real opportunity to be the grey man and to hide away. So by expeditioning and creating real experiences for people, I think it creates a fantastic opportunity to provide them with an insight into how they perform in adverse conditions, which then goes on to develop in resilience, which then allows them to sort of reflect upon how their mindset is. Have they have a growth mindset? Are they fixed? How can they change from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset? And all of these things, I think, will contribute to their self-leadership. And if I can help them develop their self-leadership, then down the line, I think their leadership of others will be a much rounded and more sort of employable asset to them and to the business and the company they're working in.
Have you got any examples just quickly of somebody that has had that light bulb moment or that transformation, or like not transfer, but that link to work, that link to their life outside of this new world they just landed in?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to come back to the example I'm going to use is something that one of your other guests used, was Phil Quirk, one of the guys on one of the sort of wilderness canoe expeditions. The opportunity to reflect, to understand what he was actually doing in his primary role, in his primary career in the Air Force during this wilderness open canoe expedition. He had the time to be mindful, and he understood that actually the things that he was doing weren't the things that he wanted to really be doing. He just got on this train and it was going so fast. The windows of the outside was flying past so fast, he didn't really have a chance to see the road signs or the place signs. This wilderness expedition allows you to stop a little bit, allows you to disconnect, and this guy ultimately decided to get off that train and to get on the train that he really should be on for his own mental safety, his own career development. So yeah, that was a really interesting. I don't think it would perhaps adhere to what the Air Force wanted to get out of that particular expedition, but for him, it was it was very much a light bulb moment that the environment provided him.
Fantastic. So Matt, that's our 20 minutes. It flies by every time and I love it. So Matt, thank you so much for your time. Guys, if you're listening on your podcast provider, make sure you hit us a follow and share, pass it forwards and give us a review. I'd love to know your takeaways from each of the episodes. If you can see us and you're on the YouTube channel, make sure you subscribe. We've got episodes coming out every Wednesday at 6 a.m. and I look forward to seeing you all next week. Matt, thank you so much for joining me. We'll catch up soon. And yeah, thanks very much. And see you soon, guys. Take care. Bye.